Hey guys, so we've been talking about cell transport, and we have went over passive transport, and now we're going to look at active transport. What are a few types of passive transport that we've already went through? Yes.
We went through the passive and active transport.
We went through passive. What's an example of passive transport?
Osmosis.
Osmosis is one. What's another one? Yes.
Diffusion.
Diffusion. Yes, very good. Diffusion. Diffusion. That one's kind of broken. We got diffusion. And we also have osmosis. What makes osmosis and diffusion passive transports? What makes that a passive rather than active? Yes, Javian.
It passes through the areas.
It passes through the areas. Does it use ATP or does it not use?
Use energy.
Passive? Remember, if someone's passive, what are they? They're not, they're slow to anger,
They provide.
Yes, exactly. So, what is passive energy?
Passive energy.
Or not passive energy, but passive transport.
Passive transport is like when you said about it's not like slow to get in, but it's trying. I guess trying to.
It gets in, but without the use of energy. It's natural. Remember the other day, guys, we did an experiment on diffusion, and we had a bag and we had a cup. And in the cup, some of us had a whole bunch of iodine. And in the bag, some of us had about a teaspoon of starch, correct? Yes.
Okay, I wanted to answer what was happening.
Okay, so tell me, what was happening? What was diffusing into what here?
The iodine was diffusing into the bag, and it was changing colors. Like the person had, when it was diffusing into the bag, the iodine, the person had purple stuff at the top. And then
Exactly.
And then it was coming out with the, and then the person that didn't have less, that had less iodine, their water was going clear.
Exactly. It was going clear because it was diffusing into the bag, right? Wherever there is more particles, more substances, that's called a higher concentration gradient, right? So naturally, just like with the tennis balls bouncing, if we open this door, some of those tennis balls are going to escape into the next room. It's natural. If we were all in a swimming pool, bunched up, and there was no room to swim, and magically another pool opened up, some of us are going to want to go over to that pool where there's nobody in it, right? It's the same thing with diffusion and osmosis. It wants to go where there is hardly any other molecules or substances. It's called going down the concentration gradient. So from a high, like a slide, to a low, and that's what diffusion is. So now that we got that under control, now we're going to talk about using ATP or using energy. Where is ATP made in the cell? Yes, Javian?
In the mitochondria.
In the mitochondria. So if it's made in the mitochondria, some particles cannot get through a cell membrane. Brandon, hand me that cell membrane up there. Because some molecules and particles are too big, they cannot go into the cell membrane. I just need one. Yes. They cannot get into our cell membrane. Our cell membrane is made of tails and heads. These balls represent the heads, right? These are the tails. It's a double bilayer. That's why there are heads on the outside and heads on the inside. And then the little gatekeepers are the tails. The heads love water. They love to go swimming. They're called hydrophilic. These tails, they don't like water. They're afraid of water. And being afraid of something is called a phobia, right? So these tails are hydrophobic. So we have two opposites. What happens just like on a battery or just like when you like somebody? What do we say? Two opposites do what?
They combine.
They combine. They attract. They attract to one another, kind of like a magnet, right? And so that's why our cell membrane works. So today we're going to talk about using energy and these molecules that are on the outside going to the inside of that cell. The first one, there's a picture on page 82 of. It's called the sodium-potassium pump. And this is really cool. If I went over here and I said, hey, I'll give you 3 sodium ions if you give me 2 potassium ions. You're like, okay. So we trade off. There's a constant trade of molecules. Why? Because if our cell gets too big, what happens?
It explodes. It diffuses.
It explodes. It will explode. What is that called, Javian? It's
Hypotonic solution.
Hypotonic. It's good. It's hypo. So the whole reason of getting some of that out is to shrink the cell, right? What's that called?
That's called hypertonic solution.
Hypertonic solution. I know it's on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, word.
I know, they're big words. So, you guys are doing great. So, the sodium-potassium pump, it's just like her and I switching sodium and potassium. Sodium, it's going to fill up that cell, and just like having a sore throat, it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Till when you're either going to get really in pain to go to the ER and get your tonsils taken out, or your body naturally is going to use this pump to get some of that salt out of that cell. And when it does, they're going to trade it off for like what we get out of a banana, some potassium, right? So we're going to trade 3 of these sodiums because our body, that's why a lot of people say don't eat a lot of salt. Don't eat a lot of salt, it's bad for your health. Because we already have a whole bunch. And the more you have, the worse it can be on your body. So we have enough sodium to trade. That's why we trade 3 of these. That comes out of the cell, and 2 potassiums go in.
I get it, like, cause you shouldn't have like a lot of it, or you're gonna explode. You're gonna mess up your cell. And then you can trade out for this.
Exactly. And a different molecule too, right? So, Javian, we go down the concentration gradient. When we go down the slide, we don't use any energy. We can get up on that slide and just go, whee, right? So, in active transport, it's the opposite. We're going to have to climb up that slide. And if it's a big slide, by the time we get up there, we're going to be like, yeah.
What's that energy? We had like that yesterday. What's the name of that energy when you like, it was on our paper? Hold on, I think I got it.
I know what you're talking about.
The endoxys and
the
Vesicle transport?
Yeah, that would be vesicle transport.
Yes, those are 2 ways. Diffusion and osmosis is passive, and then these pumps, these ion pumps, and those vesicle transports are active. They use energy. It takes energy to get up. That means we're fighting against the current. We're fighting against the natural law, which is going down, right? So, let's take a look at how a cell membrane is like a castle wall. Javian, can you read to me how a cell membrane is like the walls of a castle? Yes. This one here.
How the cell membrane like a castle wall. The walls of a castle like the cell membrane are designed to keep out dangerous things, whether you're concerned about an enemy army or a disease-causing bacteria. You don't want to allow everything to enter. However, in order to survive, there are some things that the cell or the castle does need to let in.
So let's pretend like we're back in the olden days. Aaliyah, you could be the princess, and you guys are knights, and I'm the queen, of course, and we're at the castle, right? Not everyone who comes to the door and knocks on the castle are good, right? Some of them might want to trick us, and if we open it up, they can attack us. Same thing with our body. If our cells are like a castle, we don't want to let just anything in. We could die from that. Bacteria, diseases like HIV getting into our blood cells. There are a lot of bad guys out there and bacteria, and we don't want to let it in.
Like I said, what's HIV?
HIV is a disease, and it gets into your cells, it gets into your blood cells. And so we'll get more into that at the end of active transport. We will be discussing that. Yes.
Just like every time somebody knock on your door at home, and you gotta say who is it before they come in, or look out the window, see who it is, and open it. That's how the sales
Exactly.
say who is it, or look out, peep out.
Yeah.
You got one
Exactly.
of the holes up in the top of the cell all day, or something, or say who is it, and then probably let that thing in, if it's good or bad. If it's bad, don't let them in.
A perfect analogy. A perfect analogy. That's exactly how it is. So because of the fact we look out our window, like you said, or we say, hey, who is it? That's called semi-permeable. Okay, that's how this cell membrane is semi-permeable. It means some of the stuff can come in, some of it can't. If all of it could come in, an open door policy, it would be just permeable, right? Enter, my casa, your casa. But it's not. Exactly. It's a semi-permeable, meaning some things can get in and some things can't.
But if it was open, so then we'll probably die. So can't have this air can come in our cells.
Exactly. It wouldn't take long either. Look at how many times there's people around us with colds. You know what I mean? And our body fights that and fights that. And our cells do that. How? Because of the cell transport. Exactly. Yes, Brendan.
So what's that word you said? It's
Mitochondria.
What does that do to our body and stuff?
What the mitochondria, does anyone want to answer that? Yes.
Like mitochondria, it makes ATP. That basically it means it provide energy for like our cells and stuff.
So
Exactly.
it keeps us calm and active and stuff?
Keeps us active. We couldn't ride a bike. I couldn't even walk. We couldn't have this conversation if we did not have ATP constantly.
They
being
talk
made.
about we couldn't talk, we could have been like
We couldn't do anything.
hear nothing.
So-
Exactly.
So basically with ASL or being deaf, that's why they couldn't move when they stopped getting energy in their body.
Yes. Yes.
So basically, ATP, microridodome, that's active transport.
The ATP is actually, you know how like if we were all in a warehouse and say you did a specific job for the warehouse, you did a job, and then you did a job. The mitochondria is a place in the cell that makes the ATP. And then that ATP is used during active transport.
Okay.
So yes, in a sense, yes. But it's made in the cell and we use it for to get substances in and out of the cell. Yes.
So mitochondrial, how you say that word? It's made out of anything, even if it's ain't in your body, or it gotta be in your body.
Mitochondria is inside every single cell we have. Remember we said that in this dot right here,
That makes
there is 400 million cells that can fit in that dot. Every single one of those cells has a mitochondria factory in there. And that's where the energy comes in. So it's a huge system. If you look at it like that, it's a huge system.
That's cool.
It's very cool. All right, go ahead and turn the page, guys. We're going to look at this membrane, and I'm going to gloss over because we've spent a lot of time saying that this is made of phospholipids, which is fats, right? Lipid is a fat, which is why in passive transport we have protein carriers, right? Those protein carriers are opposite of the lipids, which is what attracts it, and they're able to get inside. Sorry. And we're able to get inside the cell, correct? Another thing that's cool about the membrane is it's also a plasma membrane. And when I show you the animation, it's pretty cool because it eats. It's like it has a mouth, but not a mouth. It can make a mouth like that to eat certain molecules that are too big to just get transported inside. And so in just a second, we're going to look at an animation over the sodium potassium pump. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that lysosome, the thing that eats it is subsidy and stuff.
That's good. The lysosomes are like the mitochondria. They're inside the cell. But what I'm talking about is if we have a cell here, our cell's just hanging out, right? The lysosomes and the nucleus and all that stuff is inside the cell. Well, if a molecule comes out here, we'll say we have some hydrogen out here, and there's a process called endocytosis. Endo means in. There's also one called exocytosis. That means exit, leave. In endocytosis, this is what happens. All of a sudden, that plasma membrane, the cell membrane, opens up and it has a mouth. And that hydrogen gets sucked into that mouth and a bubble goes over it. And then it enters into the cell.
Also, it don't. So basically, so basically they're saying that it's trying to escape or something. And they're trying to take you back in.
We can say that. That's a good analogy too. Yep. Same thing happens with exocytosis. If that hydrogen's inside here, it does the same thing. Well, I'll make it bow out. Does the same thing. It gets it, makes a bubble around it, and then releases it. Okay? It's pretty cool. So let's go ahead and take a look at the animation. You can leave your desk there, and I'll turn it up.
What was that on there, on your computer? That's what we got to see.
Well, we're going to watch it right now.
What time is it?
Okay.
How long has it been?
And me. All right. So, all right. Membrane transport. We're not going to look at the passive transport because we've already talked about that. We're going to look at the active transport. If you need to come a little bit closer, you can. All right. So, here we have our heads and our tails, correct? Our heads love water. They're hydrophobic. Our tails, they don't like it. They're hydrophobic. Our heads are hydrophilic. Okay? So, let's go ahead and take a look. This right here, these red things, are those channels that you put on your models that I was just holding. And what those assist in is the sodium-potassium pump. And then also other receptor transports. We'll look at it in just a second. So active transport. So basically it's pumping molecules against their concentration gradient, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Why is it necessary? Because we are alive. And it's very important when you don't have a lot of different molecules just right there. Just right there. You don't have a lot of molecules just at your disposal. You know, your disposal.
That's
So we have to continually do it. Exactly.
What just happened on the thing?
What was that movie?
We'll go over it in just a second, Brandon. All right, so in this animation, we're going to be focusing on active transport. In passive, you guys already told me, diffusion and osmosis. In active, we have ion pumps, like the sodium-potassium. We have contransport, and we have endocytosis. That's where the cell membrane opens up, and it's like a mouth.
Yeah.
All right, so first, we're going to take a look at the ion pumps. Here we have hydrogen, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that the game we played?
No. No, it's not.
We played a different
Active transport. That means what? It uses what?
It uses
Energy. All right, so let's look at our picture of the cell membrane. Here we have the pump. Here's inside is the orange. Outside is the green. It takes ATP, and you're going against it. You're going up the slide instead of down the slide. So hydrogen is released, and ATP is formed.
So it takes more energy then. So when the hydrogen goes up, it takes a little bit more energy.
Exactly. Instead of going where there's hardly any molecules, there's hardly any molecules here, right?
Yes, ma'am.
They're going up. Usually we want to jump out of the pool away from all the people,
Yes, ma'am.
right? Instead, they're jumping into the pool where there's more people. And what it says here is that our cells on the inside have a negative charge, just like a battery. Outside the cell, it's a positive. What happens when a negative and positive?
They ready to fight. They be ready to fight.
They're going to combine.
They combine. They magnet. It's like a magnet. Like a magnet. And so, like that, because they're random particles. Remember when we said that's a good question. The tennis balls? They're constantly moving?
Yeah.
That's why those ions are moving.
And if you open the door, it will be an equal same amount in.
And what is that called?
And it don't want to be by itself.
Librium. That's good. I'm glad you remember that.
Cause basically the hydrogen ain't gonna be like the tennis balls which you was talking about. It just don't want to be by itself. It want to go with his family because they are the same.
Exactly. Okay, let's take a look at it one more time. What they mean by voltage is just like a battery. When this happens, that's where we get that electric charge. That's where we get the shocks and stuff like that, because our body makes this naturally.
So I got energy.
So the protein acts as a pump. It uses ATP to move this hydrogen ion out.
It's 7 of them.
Yep. All right, let's take a look at Contransport. Contransport. This is my favorite one. What it does is it takes two materials across the membrane at once. Can you hand me the membrane so I can show you guys as we're watching this? So here we have sucrose, which is a type of sugar. And it's hanging out here going, let me in, let me in. And the little piggy's going, not by there, my chin, chin, chin. It's like, I'm not going to let you in. So he's hanging out. This one comes out, and then he naturally goes down the concentration gradient. He's going to go in, and look at that guy. He follows behind
Is that
him.
like you put that on the board?
Basically, so that's a negative charge, and it's attracted to that positive charge, because it's gonna push in by itself, try to get itself.
Exactly. Have you guys ever seen, or maybe you've been there, you know those things when you go through a parking deck and it lifts up and your car goes through it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
It's like a gate.
Yes, ma'am.
And only one at a time can go out. That's what this dude's doing. He's trying to go through by following somebody else.
So basically, that's his card to get in.
What did he do to not let him come out?
That's good. What did he do? Why couldn't that sucrose go in just by himself?
Because he's a negative charge.
Hold on. Go ahead.
It's negative. It's a negative charge. So if they're basically gonna mess up the cell, but he gonna have to have somebody else with a different charge than him to get himself in.
All right.
So
Well,
they can
what do you notice about the size of that sucrose compared to the
Because that
hydrogen?
big to go through by itself.
It's too big. Larger molecules cannot just hang out and go through. Not only that, but the channels. Remember, they're only good for certain types of molecules. Not everyone can get in. So let's take a look at this guy hitching a ride. It's like a +1 almost. So it's a Contransport is a coupled passage of two materials going across a membrane. So here we have the sucrose. He's like, what am I going to do? I need to get in. And he comes and hangs out. He's not allowed to go in. This hydrogen ion is going to go out of the cell.
That's 8.
ATP is used to get out. That's energy is used. That's why this is active transport. Then he re-enters, and the sucrose follows behind.
Okay, so you know the one that's outside, right? And the one that had cancer ATP. Well, what if he was still? Well, what if they just from the outside just went through there and could he still get in? Because they don't. Could he still get in?
Because of the fact there's other hydrogens out here, he couldn't. It's almost like, have you ever been to Wild River Country?
Yes.
What happens when you leave? They put a little stamp on you in case you want to come back in? That's what's going on here.
Oh, so basically
That guy already has a stamp.
ATP is the stamp for him.
Exactly.
So they don't get no stamp, so they can't.
So when it comes,
Perfect.
when it goes in,
They have to pay.
they could go in too.
Yes.
The car.
Yes, Brenda. Or Chris.
It's like when that little person come out of the thing, it grabs what's it called?
Sucrose.
Sucrose, and went across. It's like they're invisible or something. They went across.
Exactly.
Is the ATP, is it like a shield for the ones that go
Ooh,
that way?
that's a good way to think of it. It's you could think of it in that terms, but really nothing can happen without ATP. It's almost like an energy boost. You know, it's almost like the stamp. It's the stamp.
I know what he means, because like when you get the stamp, right, they already know what you is. Like basically a stamp, you can describe it as like you a bubble, and if you're in the bubbles, people can come back in.
Yes.
But the people that don't got no bubble can't. And like basically when he go through, he can describe it as a bubble, and he can come through and pull him out.
Yes,
And
yes.
the sucrose.
Really quick, guys, so we can finish up. Yes.
If you go to Chuck E. Cheese and when you first come in, you get a stamp and you gotta pay.
Yes.
And then when you going out, they flash the little thing on you.
Yes.
And then you can come back in.
Exactly. Same concept. Okay, last one is endocytosis. Endocytosis, there's a few ways it could happen. It could eat the cell, or it could drink the cell.
Probably.
Endocytosis. See how it makes a bubble? It's the import of materials by the cell enfolding, like making a mouth. Phagocytosis is cell eating. Pinocytosis is cell drinking. And then there's receptor-mediated endocytosis. And we're going to look at all those. Oh, next. All right, let's begin with phago. Everyone say phagocytosis.
Phagocytosis. That's
Good.
a drink. That's a drink called Fago.
Then you could think of it like that, but it's the eating one.
It's a red dot
So-
cells.
So here's the food.
Ooh.
Yeah, the cell membrane basically does this and wraps around it, brings it
And
in.
it takes it and eating it.
They call it
So
a vesicle.
oxygen.
I called it a bubble, but it's really a vesicle. It's kind of like a ship, kind of like when we were playing that game.
So that's the food that we eat go down to the cell, and then the bubbles in
Exactly.
through the cell to the cell interior.
Now let's look Let's look at pinocytosis. The vesicles are fluid formed without the formation of the little lips. See, it just busts down. Instead of it coming out like the lips, it just basically opens up and like a straw slurps it in.
Like you just getting the air bubble.
Yeah, like
Exactly.
a drop straw.
All right, now receptor-mediated endocytosis. They bind with another receptor protein. Once the receptors are filled, the coated pit forms a vesicle to transport the materials. See, there's already pits in here.
Them like magnets, ain't
I
they?
wonder if if them blue things gonna stick to it.
Yeah, them kind of like
They
magnets.
stick to it,
And then it
once
goes
it's full,
down.
it's kind of like who went to the fair,
Me.
okay, or been to the fair before. So you get on a ride and you want to go now, right? You want him to start that ride, but what does he have to do first?
You have
He
to,
gotta make sure
you have to
everybody
put it on
getting on there.
Yeah,
He has
make sure
to-
everybody on.
Everyone's
Like
strapped
on the
in.
swings,
Everybody's
you have to
full.
Tie it up.
and they comes and pull your stuff.
Exactly.
And see if it's right, because you can hurt yourself or something.
But the ride has to be full before they start
Yeah, and
it.
then they bring
I
a
don't
little
like
bell.
rides, some rides because when I get on, it makes me scared. It makes me want to puke. Cause I don't like rides. I'm nervous about rides.
All right, one more time. Phago. Here it comes. Pino.
And here we go. Going
Oh,
down.
here it is. There's the fluid. If we drink orange juice or whatever, there it is. It just slurps it in.
The orange stuff look like our stomach.
Did you see the difference between that
Yoni.
and Faygo?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's look at the Faygo one more time. I want you to see the lips. Look at the animation itself. All right. Here comes the food. There's the lips.
Oh, because it
Those are
goes
called
over
pseudopods.
I pulls
Yeah.
up. And
and then go down.
Exactly.
But
and
the
then
other
it
one,
makes
it
the
just
vesicle.
opened up.
Exactly.
And then it went down.
All right, next, the Pinot.
so they basically serve their food to the nucleus.
Yes, very good. Just slurps it in. See those two
It goes
things
down.
didn't go up? And then the last one is hold on just one second. The last one is the receptor.
They got them stick things. Them red things look like sticks.
Yeah, but
It's like a ride at the fair. It has to be full.
yeah, they're kind of like magnets. They attract to one another and pulls in.
Can it pull us out too? Can it pull out?
We'll
It
talk
depends.
about that tomorrow. It's
It-
called exocytosis.
It
So
kind
this
of
repeat-
depends.
So this repeat, however you say that word.
Receptor mediated.
Receptor mediator
Yes.
is just like a magnet, and they, when the balls went
But-
down, it went, and then it went down into the
Yes.
stomach.
If the cell don't like it, it can pull back out. If the cell don't like it,
If it's a
your
magnet
stomach.
on the, if you have a
don't
magnet,
like it,
if you
stomach, you throw
the
it.
tip, can electrical,
Shock
yes,
occur?
yes.
There's more to it than that. We'll get into it when we get into forces in motion. Real quick, guys, so that we can get through this, I want you to take a look at this sodium potassium pump because we have questions to do on
The
this.
sodium-potassium pump is an active transport mechanism. 3 sodium ions bind to the protein channel, and an ATP provides the energy to change the shape of the channel that in turn drives the ions through the channel. One phosphate group from the ATP remains bound with the channel.
Those are the sodium.
The sodium ions are released on the other side of the membrane outside of the cell, and the new shape of the channel has a high affinity for potassium ions, and 2 of these ions now bind to the channel.
Here comes the
This
potassium.
binding again causes a change in the shape of the protein channel, and this conformational change releases the phosphate group on the cytoplasm
They're
side.
going to come into the cell.
This release allows the channel to revert to its original shape, and as a result, the potassium ions are released inside the cell.
Oh, that can be in the
In its
same
original
time.
shape, the channel has a high affinity for sodium ions, and when these ions bind
That's
again,
ATP.
they initiate another cycle. The important characteristic of this pump is that both sodium and potassium ions are moving from areas of low concentration to areas of high concentration. That is to say, each ion is moving against its concentration
Going
gradient.
up the slide.
This type of movement can only be achieved by the constant expenditure of ATP energy.
All right. So, what did we learn here? We learned that active transport, what happens?
It transport ATP, like when your hydrogen go through the
Energy.
ATP, it can bring in the crucose with the ATP,
The sucrose.
the sucrose, the
And then the
ATP.
other ones are the
Pinot,
Oh, the Pinot.
the Fago, and the Pinot, and then the receptor mediated. No matter what, energy is being used. It's not like the lab we did last week with diffusion. That happens without any energy. It wants to do that naturally. This requires energy, which is why everyone says eat good foods, high in protein foods. Eat all your vegetables because our cells need it. It's not just your parents going now. It's because literally your bodies need it.
I do not like carrots.
How much time is that?
32.
Okay, cool. You can turn it off.
Carrots, they nasty.
Thank you so much. I didn't